Hello, everybody. It's nice to see you here, and it's nice to see people who I've seen for years and known for years. I really got inspired to finish this film. It's something that I had been wanting to make for years, and every once in a while I would do an interview. And then this year, when I could see that my incessant obsession with the politics was not really paying off, I decided I should finish a film, and this is the film I finished, the Shöx Lumania MANIA. So, without further ado, I guess we'll watch the film. Oh, and if you think of some questions, if you will, because it would be nice to ask Manny some questions at the end of this. We'll speak about it at the end.
Larry and I started fooling around with Manny on the synthesizer, and Larry came up with some lyrics, and the next thing you know, we had a band, and I was a backup singer.
A lot of the people who did porn were legit filmmakers, and they were either perverts or they needed extra money on the side. The history of porn in the middle of Shöx Lumania.
There's a stranger in the corner. Have you seen the stranger in the crowd?
They're all wearing leg warmers.
What is it called?
Over jeans. They were like real tight jeans with leg warmers and dresses.
Yeah,
B8, bingo!
here we have Man Parrish, and he's in Florida in his studio. I believe he's in his studio, yeah. And so Manny was in this group, Shöx Lumania. It was his first group, and he wrote some of the music, and he helped work on the audio sweetening for the final mix. And I think I may actually go back and do a little more editing on that film, so you'll be seeing a one version of the film that no one else will ever see. Like I'm going to add subtitles for the telephone conversation with Brian Damage, because I had a hard time. I know what he said because I heard him say it, but I think that was a little muddled. Anyway, so Manny, I wanted to ask you.
Yeah, there you go. I couldn't hear that, but I think it was an introduction.
I wanted to ask you, Manny, what's your musical background before this first band you had? Did you teach yourself or what?
I got into music by smoking pot. I was a young kid, and I wasn't into like pop music, and I bought a synthesizer that I literally soldered together from Radio Shack. And I would smoke a lot of weed, and I had one of those lamps when the heat rises up, it turns around and put all the projections on the wall. And my neighbors used to avoid me in the hallway because there was like kind of sounds coming out with a lot of smoke from under my doorway. So that's how I learned to do music. As you know, I've worked with Boy George, Michael Jackson, Managed Village People, Shöx Lumania, a million people, and I still can't read or write music. It's all done by ear. So I'm not really a musician. I mean, I guess I'm a musician, but I'm not a musician per se. I couldn't tell you what key any of the songs are in that you just heard. All I know is I did it by ear. So I'm self-taught.
Good.
And since Shöx Lumania was my first band, it was the only group of misfits that didn't know anything about music, so they couldn't tell me, can we raise that a half step or play that in the key of A flat? That's how I got away with it, because I got to do whatever I wanted, you know, and nobody challenged me on my musical skills.
Huh.
A lot of those live shows, since we didn't have a band, was recorded to cassette. I had a reel-to-reel tape recorder, which means it's two tracks of stereo. You would record on one track, bounce the music to another track with whatever you were recording, and then you would bounce it back and forth, building up layers and layers and layers of sound. And then I would mix it to cassette, so it was in glorious mono. and then Larry and the group would sing, live to it afterwards. So this is all before computers and musical instrument digital interfaces and all that kind of stuff that we use today for writing music. So it was very organic, very hands-on, very art.
And you're still doing stuff now, aren't you? In the studio?
Yeah, I just did a Christmas song with a 200-person choir and 200-person orchestra. So it came a long way from a little handmade synthesizer doing sound-on-sound recordings in mono to, what I'm doing now. I had to do a Christmas thing for somebody, for a group and stuff like that. Yeah. So I still write music. I produce music. If you have iTunes or any of those music services, just do Man Parrish. I recently got a music publisher, and I didn't know what my catalog was because it was all over the place. I have 326 songs and 26 albums. That's like Aerosmith kind of stuff, you know what I mean? So I'm writing music and have been writing music for a long time. And after Shöx Lumania, I wound up doing soundtracks for porn films, and that's how I got my record deal. So it was a non-conventional beginning. Let's put it that way.
Are you doing a lot of road travel and road tours?
Not musically, because that takes a lot of money to put together. And unfortunately, today in the music business, in the old days, you would sell records. Now it's all about streaming, and people get 0.0025 cents every time their song is streamed. You get a couple of million streams, you'll get a check for $20, So putting together, you don't have record companies supporting you anymore. I'm my own independent label. I do most of the stuff out of the house, but I can get stuff up on iTunes within 24 hours and around the world within 3 or 4 days. It's a lot better for me as a musician because no record company or anybody's telling me what to do. And because of that, people know me for dance music, but I do classical, I do ambient, I do experimental stuff. I'm working with a group of kids from Russia. I don't even know what they're singing about, probably Death to America for all I know. But, I'm producing them and I'm having fun. I'm 66 years old producing a punk rock album and I'm loving it,
That's great.
Yep. Shöx Lumania was the first band that we had. I did it in my loft on 38th Street. I don't know if many people there know Joey Arias, but Joey Arias was my roommate. 6 of us lived there, and we would do rehearsals in the loft. And Brian Damage, which was he was a clothes designer, which they showed in the movie. He was like the other band member, and he would go. We lived in the Garment District on 38th Street between 5th and 6th. And he would go out at night and dive into the dumpsters and pick up little pieces of threads and doilies and stuff like that. And he would build costumes. And they would go backstage and change for the next show. So our thing was to have different costumes for every song, which was a nightmare. But nobody did that. So we stood out from other groups. We played Peppermint Lounge and Hurrahs and a lot of those places back then, which were pretty cool, pretty amazing, It was quite a thing. A lot of places wouldn't let you play if you were a band, but a lot of the cooler, new wavy kind of places would let you play with a cassette thing. And at the same time, right after that, I was working with somebody, Klaus Nomi, which people might know, because I wound up working on the Klaus Nomi stuff. So that happened all around the same time.
Did you help to produce his show that he did?
I worked on a lot of the live show, and I worked on 3 of his albums. I did all the synthesizer, and when Klaus passed away, I was at the hospital a couple of weeks. He was one of the first people to get AIDS. It wasn't even called AIDS then; it was called GRID, gay-related immune deficiency. And I promised Klaus one day, he was unhappy with the music he was doing. Because it was rock and roll and he wanted to do synthesizer, and I was the only synthesizer guy. I said, one of these days I'll do an album for you. We all knew I was saying after he passed away, and I wound up doing that just recently, which is on my Man Parrish website. I'm not here to sell records. I'm here to talk about Shöx Lumania, but that whole group of people in New York was a very small community of artists. So like who went out on a Wednesday or Thursday night but the dysfunctional artists, and went to Mud Club and Danceteria, Peppermint Lounge, all these places. So we all kind of knew each other. I remember seeing groups like Aerosmith when they were nobody, and at Max's Kansas City, and Bruce Springsteen get booed off of a stage because he was playing, you know, an acoustic guitar set in the very early Devo. But that's what New York was like back then. You know, you were an artist, and you'd meet another artist, and yeah, it was crazy. Like, you'd say, "Oh, what do you do?" "I'm a musician." "What do you do?" "Oh, I paint with feces and blood." And you go, "Oh, okay, that's cool." You know, I mean, it was like everybody was an artist, but it was really kind of a cool place, very cool, creative, you know, city to be in for experimental or even commercial art. It was really cool. I thought it was really cool, and I'm glad that Shöx Lumania, we were part of that underground New York City art movement. You know, we were an art band, not a. The music was important, but I went to high school performing arts where the movie Fame came from. So I worked at the Metropolitan Opera House at 14 as an extra on stage. I'd get paid $10 to put grease paint on and march in a non-singing part in the army. So we approached Shöx Lumania from the theatrical thing. It wasn't just about the songs; it was about doing a stage performance. And since every song was like a scene, every scene had to have different costumes. So that's the roots of that.
And did you were in the early shows changing costumes every song?
No, I was pressing play on the cassette recorder off the side of the stage because no one else knew how to do that. I wasn't letting anybody near my cassette. It's my cassette player and my songs, and no one's going to touch it. It was one of those kind of things. Does anybody have questions out there?
Questions, anybody?
Yeah, sure.
You'll have to repeat it to me.
Here, talk into the camera.
We never found out what instrument you play, or maybe instruments.
I'm a keyboard player, not by any kind of training, by picking with one finger, but I use technology and synthesizers to create chords and stuff like that. So if there's a word, a synthesist, that's me. I use synthesizers before they were even popular. You know, built my very first one, and now I have a massive studio with tons. Again, I could do film scores now, but I came from a very humble little beginning with a mono synthesizer. But keyboards and I'm more of a synthesizer player than a keyboardist, let's put it that way. I still struggle with chord progressions and things, but there are apps for that. So that's what I basically do, is synthesizer work.
Any other questions? Who came up with the name Shöx Lumania?
Larry. Larry's name is Larry Herenick, and he came up with Larry Shöx, and that was his club name. You know, I'm Man Parrish, but it's Man Parrish, and Andy Warhol gave me my name. It's a whole other story, but everybody had a little name. You know, Klaus Nomi was Klaus Sperber, and Nomi was Do You Know Me? And then it was cut to Nomi instead of Knowme. So everybody had a little name tag. And Larry, I don't know how the Lumania part came, but it was Larry Shöx, and then it was Shöx Lumania, which became the name of the group. It was just meant to be weird and artsy and different. There's no hidden meaning in the Lumania part of it, you know. Maybe it came from, manic mania. I mean,
Luminescent.
I don't know how we even survived. I mean, nobody worked. We lived in a loft with 6 people. There was no heat, you know what I mean? We probably ate a piece of bread between 5 people, you know. But somehow or another, we made art, found junk in the streets, and I had a tape recorder, and the electricity was on. I don't know how, and all we did was make music and go out to clubs, which inspired us to come back and do more music, you know. So, people say, "Oh, it's cool, you lived in that era, how cool it was." And I'm like, no, we starved, we suffered, we froze, we were poor, we couldn't take a cab, we walked 30 blocks, you know, in the snow to go to some club or something like that, you know. I mean, I'm sure a lot of people in the audience around our age remember that life. And would I go back? Probably, if it brought me to where I am now, that I could do music and do stuff freely, absolutely. I would absolutely do it if it brought me where I am now, which is way more comfortable in my skin and doing a lot more work than I've ever done before.
Anybody else have a question for Manny?
Come on, everybody wants to hear Duran Duran. They don't want to hear this shit anymore, right? No.
What's your studio like over there in Florida, and what city is that?
I'm out of Palm Beach. Let me see if I could walk you guys into the studio. I gotta turn some lights on. I'm gonna go dark for a minute. Hang on a second. It's gonna get real dark until I turn the light up. Give me 1 second, guys, and I'll show you. I have a virtual studio system. Alrighty. So these are some of my toys that I play with. These are synthesizer modules and racks and keyboards. Those are 64-inch monitors and a mixing desk and more synthesizers and keyboards. This is a vast majority of what I do. A lot of patching stuff in. And I have like Photoshop has plugins for audio. I have plugins. So if I need a 70s keyboard, I need a drum machine, I need an orchestra, I need a choir, they're basically plugins. I use Apple Logic, and I could do all kinds of stuff now with algorithms. Like for this movie, I did a little audio restoration. I could take pre-mixed vocals and pull the vocal out, which you could never do before. So this is my craft is technology, if that makes sense. That's what I do for my music. I'm not a guitar player. The keyboards are not only musical things, but they're actually switches to switch sounds on and off. So it's a different kind of synthesis and music. And that's a picture of me from 1983. My God, it's Actually, there's another one here too with Joey Arias and Adrian Richards from my group. We did costumes and makeup and all that kind of. We used to play hip hop clubs. I had a hip hop record, and here were these three queens that came in with makeup and glitter and skirts and turned these homeboys out. They were like, "My God, what is this?" They've never seen anything like that before. But that's those are my toys.
Those are analog, right?
What's that?
All those things with the knobs on them, are they analog?
Yeah, these are analog. Well, they're digital versions of analog synthesizers, but those are filters and envelopes and mixers and wave shapers and all that stuff. And you put all this stuff together, and out comes different sounds. And as a synthesist, I have to learn how to blend waveforms together to get sounds that I want. I hear stuff in my head, and then I go to that and. Excuse me. I guess it's like an artist painting with colors. Like I know grass is green, so I can go there if I heard a certain sharp kind of sound. This synthesizer, that waveform is for sharp sounds, and this is for dull sounds, and this is for this mood, so on and so on.
I'll go to the website. A lot of stuff for free on this website.
ManParrish.com, ManParrish.com has all kinds of crap there. I actually have a series called Man Parrish Stories on YouTube. So I work with Boy George and Michael Jackson, Gloria Gaynor. I managed the Village People for 6 years. A Bronski beat. I just did Roberta Flack. Blah 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 blah. But there's some fun behind the scenes, dishy little stories, and
his YouTube channel.
What me dish.
Well, thank you very much, Manny. It was nice spending time
Absolutely.
with you.
The Shöx Lumania stuff was really precious. Thank you so much for remembering that. It was a very special little time. It was an art group. And if you didn't do this, it would probably have gone into obscurity. It wasn't anything major. We didn't do anything incredible musically, but on a scene where you basically had guys with black t-shirts and black pants playing a 4-piece band, we were this little sparkle glitter fairies that came in and lit up the stage with what the hell is that? And that alone was great because we got to stand out from everybody else. And thank you for thinking it was important enough to do a movie. My first band, yay! Thanks, guys. We good? We good? All right, great, thank you. Happy holidays.
Yeah.
All right.
Keep
Now, I could run that studio. How do I quit the Zoom? That's the big problem. No, I'm just kidding. All right, guys. Thank you. Absolutely.
Okay. So I'll say a few words about the film, the New Order film. The first night, well, my story is going to be in the film, so I shouldn't repeat it too much. But this was the first New York performance of the band, and they had come to Hurrah 3 months earlier. They were supposed to come to Hurrah as Joy Division, but the lead singer had committed suicide, so they canceled that gig. And so that was my first night in the club. Anyway, I'm just repeating what's in the film. The film, I created a lot of visualization to try and tie together the artist, another artist from the same period and the same place, Manchester, a famous painter called L.S. Lowry, who was famous for doing matchstick men. It's the name of the paintings that he did. They were kind of primitive, and he was the first person to make studies of this industrial area and bring it up to fine art. So I felt like New Order did something like that with sound, just like a half a generation later, because their time overlapped a bit. Okay, so without further ado, I will show the film, and we can talk after. Three days before what would have been the U.S. debut of Joy Division, Ian Curtis took his life. 4 months later, the group, without Ian, made their U.S. debut as New Order.
We were very nervous and very unsure of ourselves musically.
Nothing would have stopped us living life to the full, if you like.